healthcare plans that you also fund for all of these retirees. Now, people in the auto sector are very familiar with those because when Obamacare came into place, they said, hang on, hey, I'm a union member, I'm a Democrat, I support you, but you told me I could keep my plan, and my plan from the UAW is quite good and pays a heck of a lot more than what you're going to pay me. I don't want to lose my open. So, of course, as politicians tend to do, they carved out exemptions for their constituents. But that's the thing. We need to, the first thing, again, we do people I can trust, first and foremost, and start implementing, bringing people with that expertise to be able to start looking at the operations. Because as I mentioned in the debate recently, oftentimes you hear controller candidates say, I want to audit. Oh, okay, audit. Great, audit. I say, you do realize auditing is part of the job description. It's your obligation. It's not a campaign promise. It's not some novel campaign thing. I'm going to audit everything. Well, auditing is what you're supposed to do anyway. Reminds me of the Chris Rock joke where he says, hey, I take care of my kids. And he goes, that's what you're supposed to do. Well, as an auditor, as a controller, you're supposed to audit 20% of the agencies every year. That's not a campaign promise. That's not a campaign innovation. That's what you're supposed to do. What's important is what are you going to do beyond auditing? Because auditing also oftentimes in government, it's like the commissions that you see in Congress. Oh, we have this problem. Let's start a commission. And let's spend a lot of money. Let's give everybody a lot of titles. Let's take them on junkets and things. And let's study the problem. Oh, okay. Now let's put out this really thick book of recommendations. This is what we found wrong. Oh, hold on. No, that messes with my daughters. Okay, great. This is what we found. And this bipartisan commission. And these are all the problems. Okay, now what are we going to do? Well, I don't know now. Now it's time for us to start campaigning. The thing took like 4 or 5 years to put out. Hey, it's time for campaigning. And the senators will have to get, now you have to re-elect me if you want us to do something about this, correct? So this is what the problem is when also a lot of these candidates, I'm going to audit. Yeah, no, you have to be able to, what is they say? Chew gum and walk at the same time. Yeah, you have to audit, that's your job description. But then you have to go beyond it and start implementing things that will actually cut the waste. It isn't just simply, oh, I'm going to audit and say, okay, this is running efficiently. Let me save you some time. It's sort of a 75 to 90% chance that pretty much every agency is being run inefficient. Let's just go by that. And if you're pleasantly surprised and find one that is incredibly doing well, then that's gravy for you. Well, you can just go by the default that most of them are running inefficient. So let's go over to the next step. What can we start doing now to start finding inefficiencies and start fixing them and making changes upon? And that's why Lean Six Sigma and then performance-based budgeting as a stepping stone to zero-based budgeting. So, but you had a question. Did I answer your question?
Hello, Paul. How are you? Heshy Tishler. I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
As controller, you are in control of a $90+ billion budget. You alone. Nobody else. We give you, the city council, whichever you get elected, most of them are going to hand you over $90-something billion. A normal businessman, which you are and I am, know how to make a profit. Our city seems to always go over the hole. Matter of fact, last year over $9 billion over the hole. Because of our stupid mayor, but we won't discuss that. My question to you is, you have so many government agencies that you pay or we pay, that duplicity, that means you have 5 commissioners or 6 commissioners in each of these agencies that do the same thing, that won't interact with each other, that should be combined into one. Just alone over there, you can save over $2.5 billion if you just combine most of these chiefs and commissioners. Forget the waste of manpower and closing up early hours. These guys are just wasting us our money. That was part one of the question. When you're auditing, you're going to see this, and then of course we're going to get to the homeless projects. Now I'm not ever saying not to take care of our homeless people, but these idiots don't know how to do it correctly. And the controller has the money. You have a Department of Homeless Services that just doesn't really care. It's spending over $250 million in 100 new homeless shelters, when the HPD, which is a direct agency, another agency, which I'm also a receiver of, they have spending money to create senior living or adult centers with the same idea. And their programs are much better than putting 14 or 15 people in a corrugated room and living like animals. Now we're spending double this money. We don't know what we're doing when we can have the better life of living. When you're auditing these budgets, not 20%. You gotta go right through that budget, and I promise you, a normal businessman could cut that place down by 20%. Not only show a profit of the city of New York, which we should show, but again, the waste, the manpower. We have 330,000 government employees. Now, one of them was put on furlough. Now, one of them took any pay cuts. Matter of fact, they got hazard pay, which I don't even know why when they didn't do the work. And the waste of money, and they keep fining the people of the city of New York. The controller's job is to shut them down. When you see $9 billion or $3 billion or $2 billion being thrown into agencies and commissioners, you need to stop that. And you have the power to take away their money. And just stop it. So my question to you is, when you do get into office, will you do that? Will you review all these? I mean, I don't even want to tell you how many agencies I deal with every month. Will you review the Consumer Affairs, Department of Buildings, Department of Housing, Department of Sanitation, Department of Homeless Services? And if you want me to, I'll keep going with all those letters that you want to okay,
you're speaking my language.
And these are guys who just waste and waste and waste. And when you talk to one agency, they tell you to talk to the other agency, that talks to the other agency, and then you have to hire an idiot like me, I am sorry, that actually charges these poor people and sees the suffering and the strife, and I have to go cut a lock to open up a park because the Parks Commissioner is saying something from the Department of Buildings, they're saying something from the Department, from HPD. You need, as controller, to stop that day one. Tell everybody, hey, you're not getting any more money. I want to see what's going on. Especially, like this young woman over here in front of me, this beautiful lady said, the homeless issue is...
You can say it again.
But the homeless issue is not an issue that we have mistreated. It's the controller's fault that he's throwing money and allowing these people to spend it with no control. And you have duplicity without any action. I'm sorry.
Let the
I will
man
shut up
answer.
now. It's all yours.
Well, I'm completely in agreement with you, and in fact, I think a model for what you're mentioning that we should have done more of across city government, we haven't. And some of you will, I think most of you will remember when Mayor Giuliani came in, was one of the major things that he did that seemed controversial at the time, but now seemed fairly logical. We used to have a transit police, a housing police, this agency police, and this other agency police. I remember, being Puerto Rican, the Puerto Rican Day Parade, or even the St. Patrick's Day Parade, you would have, okay, now is this contingent of police, and this contingent of police, and this other contingent of police, and this other, and again, you have all these different groups, different structures, infrastructure, hierarchies, and it says, why is it that why can't we just have NYPD in the subway, NYPD in housing, NYPD whatever? And that's what we did. They combined. And at the time, it was like, oh my God, we can't do this. And you're absolutely right. We need to do that. Whether it's in housing, homeless services, all of that. No, but the one thing that I caution you is in the fact that the problem that I see with also a lot of these controller candidates, they say, oh, I'm going to audit, I'm going to do everything. Let's be honest. When you try to do everything, you do nothing. That's, again, it's commission. You have to divide and conquer. So that's why my proposal is that we need to look at 3 or 4 major agencies in a really deep dive to do things of that nature. And the first ones I would look at are Department of Education, NYCHA, and also sanitation, and definitely homeless services on that.
HPD and DOB, those are the ones that just con and rip us off and suck the blood out of the city of New York and the poor people that are sitting around them here now. And you, Mr. Future Controller, which I know you'll be elected, have the power to stop them on day one. You are pushing good looking too. And so you need to look good. You're better looking than my boy over there, I'm sorry. You find somebody more handsome. You have a controller, go in there and start screaming on day one. That's the only way I believe that you can do it. Again, commissioner after commissioner, you can combine them. I'm not even asking you to combine the agencies. At least, like you said, the hierarchy, the commissioners, the chiefs, it's just a not normal thing.
Even the pension plans, we have 5 different pension plans.
Yeah.
Perhaps it makes sense that we have 5 different, but even if you have separate pension plans, do you necessarily need to have separate management structures for them? Why can't we use the same money managers, that type of thing? But also, I think you need to keep your eye on the ball. One of the candidates I remember on the Democratic side had said, and I mean no disrespect when she said this, she says, My first international trip will be to this country because since we own bonds from that country, it's going to be, I have a reason to go there. I go, hang on. Now, me being from that kind of the world, I was an analyst, so our clients hired us to do research on the companies and the investments, so we're the ones who travel wherever we needed to travel to do this. I'm going, what business does a controller, first of all, you're not the mayor, even. You're not Secretary of State. Why are you talking about your first international trip? So your first international taxpayer-funded trip, you're going to go because somehow we own the bonds. So in that case, we own the bonds, I'm sure, of many different sovereign nations. So you can be on taxpayer-funded junkets all over the place. And this woman, Michelle Caruso Cabrera, she's a financial journalist, and I respect her. She was a Republican and conservative for many years, decided to switch, however. That, frankly and bluntly, that was a grift. She ran for office knowing she had no idea, no way that she was going to probably win the primary. Although she came in, I think, third. She did pretty well. She basically got a lot of money in matching funds, and her consultant made out very well. But beyond that, she's a woman who should know better. She understands financial matters. But that's also the difference between working with financial matters and reporting on them. She was great. She could report about companies, mergers, all sorts of things. But then, when we actually talked about what does the job of the controller do, she goes, oh, well, my first international trip will be such and such because we own the bones of that country. And I'm going, okay. Why is a controller of the city of New York talking about, well, unless you're going to a conference in maybe Toronto or Montreal, maybe going down to Mexico City, at least you stay within the same hemisphere. Why are you saying you're going to, go across the world because you own the bonds of that country? Okay. So I think that was entirely the wrong message.
She wanted a vacation.
Yeah. No, but the point is, and I don't want to talk about the country thing because I think her heart was in the right place, but I think it's the typical double speak. Oh, let's hide somewhat inappropriate behavior from the part of a politician behind platitudes and good intentions. And you know what they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think we need to keep our eye on the ball. What is the concern? We have an overbloated city government, like you mentioned, multiple commissioners all doing the same thing, multiple agencies all doing the same thing. A pension plan that they say 70% funded, but it's really 40% funded. Those are the issues we have to tackle, and we need to keep our eye on the ball. Like I said, I'm Latino, I love diversity, I love all these things, but focus on what we need to do. What we need to do is making sure those plans are solvent. You're not wasting taxpayer money. You get out of that $9 billion deficit or whatever it will happen to be this year, and that you don't all of a sudden don't now go to an $120 billion budget or $110 billion budget next year. Because why? You have to focus on what the objective is. And I think a lot of politicians, they major in minor things, and they say, oh, well, whatever, in the future, it's going to work itself out. If there's anything the pandemic has shown us, people of means, people who can, will leave and have left. And I love this city. I want to see it succeed, and I want to be part of the solution of the problem.
Okay.
I know I've been here a while, so
It's all right. We
I don't mind.
appreciate
I don't
No,
mind.
no,
As
you're
long as you have
good.
me, I
You're
don't
very
mind.
good.
you. All right, I have a question for you, and it may or may not fall within your hopefully potential purview. Currently, Mayor de Blasio has stated that he is closing Rikers Island and setting up 4 regional prisons in each of, 4 of the 5 boroughs. Okay, these institutions have not been built yet. There's a question as to funding. Second part of this, Mr. de Blasio, Mayor Wilhelm, has also advocated and proposed with budget money for homeless services, shelters to be built in largely residential areas. For our friend from Brighton Beach, there is one currently proposed over where Emmons Avenue and Neptune Avenue meet at the old, it's a warehouse / manufacturing site.
100 Neptune Avenue.
Thank you very much.
And one in Borough Park.
All right.
That just got $40 million
discount. We have these. We just give an example. As far as previously, Mayor Bloomberg made it a point to buy land in lower economic or lower valued areas so you can build a larger facility and help more individuals. This is being spread out simply for, I don't know, whatever reason Wilhelm wants. You come in as a comptroller. You have the mayor who has spread the love and joy, the prisons and the shelters around. What do you do to help rein in the bloat or the potential bloat of 4 new quote-unquote prisons and multiple small regional neighborhood homeless shelters in largely residential neighborhoods?
I think, and I'll take the homeless part first. It really doesn't matter how many new homeless shelters you build if you're going to continue managing them the way they have been. If there are places where they're unsafe and the homeless are not going to want to go to anyway, then again it just becomes a jobs project and basically payoffs and patronage to your to particular donors or people who support you. That's one thing. On the Rikers Island issue, which I'm completely against necessarily closing it, if you have a perfectly good location, structure, wouldn't it be better to then take that money and simply improve upon that particular asset that you already have?
Yes.
Rather than closing one and opening 5 new ones, again, it becomes a jobs project, perhaps, or it's just another way of handing out, of divvying out
Yes.
government money to your allies.
Yes.
So I think people intuitively get this. Mayor de Blasio, which is quite somewhat shocking to me, shouldn't shock me. This is the way things are, unfortunately. But he's almost very blatant about his corruption. He knows he does things bad, but he smiles and he's affable. I'm here, and I'm campaigning in Iowa for Hillary Clinton, or for whomever, or for Barack Obama, and all these things. And again, his better half basically squandered $1 billion that it's unaccounted for.
Yeah.
People know this, or they seem to know this, and yet they vote for him. I've heard that if Mayor de Blasio were to run again, he'd probably get reelected, and perhaps overwhelming.
Why?
That is a very sad state of affairs, but it just makes it incumbent upon us to educate the public more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that's the question. How do we do that? And it's going to take time. And it's going to take buy-in from everybody
Why can't the
and support from everybody.
Why can't the community say I don't care what people, that we don't want this, go build it in the Hamptons.
You're assuming the government cares what you think.
No, they don't care.
I mean,
No,
I'm sounding a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but
No,
unfortunately,
it's true.
the government
Why
doesn't
don't
really seem to care half the
communities
time.
get together and say, we the people do not want this, this kind of, project or homeless or imprisoned, we don't want it in our community. That was it keeps destroying. And why
Rudy,
can't they stand up?
what
against
do you
them
do
and
when it's
stop
your
the homeless?
Democrats and you voted your Democrat councilman in and he says, what are you going to do, vote Republican?
Yeah.
And they toss their hands up in the air and they go, I guess I'm not going to vote Republican then.
You say, I will.
Keep going, Mr. Democrat, Nocera over
Don't
there.
ever call me that.
Can I tell you something? Can I tell you something? I'm Latin, right? And then we talk about why politicians, and you probably appreciate this, they go after the Hispanic vote or Latino vote more, and oftentimes the African American vote if you're on the right, because the Latino vote or Hispanic, whatever term. I've never had a problem with Hispanic, so I am. Depending, on how you approach it, they'll go one way or the other, or you're able to get enough support from that side to make a difference in a race. But if you're, particularly on the presidential level, but if you're on the side where, let's say, every single presidential race, 9 out of 10 African Americans will always vote for Democrat regardless of what they do, regardless of whether they keep their campaign promises, regardless of anything that happens. Whereas on the Latino side, maybe 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, depending on the race, depending on who it is. But if every single time, 9 out of 10, why does that happen? That means, first of all, The Democrat side will say to you, you're in my pocket, whatever I do.